The wedding feast was supposed to be a celebration. King Joffrey Baratheon had married Margaery Tyrell, uniting two powerful houses. The wine flowed like rivers, laughter filled the hall, and music echoed from every corner of the Red Keep. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, so did the mood. Joffrey had been cruel all day, mocking Tyrion, throwing coins at dwarves dressed as kings, and laughing as if the Iron Throne was a toy. Tywin Lannister sat silently, watching his grandson make a fool of himself in front of lords, ladies, and commoners alike. Every insult Joffrey threw felt like a sword in the chest of House Lannister's pride. And when Joffrey choked and died before their eyes, clawing at his throat, blood pouring from his nose, it seemed, at first, like divine justice. But it wasn't the gods. It was murder. And in the hours that followed, Tywin's mind worked faster than any maester's quill. Rumors were flying. Eyes were turning to Tyrion, who had handed Joffrey the poisoned cup. Cersei screamed accusations like a madwoman, her grief turning into rage. But Tywin was not moved by tears or screams. He was moved by logic, and logic told him one thing. Joffrey had become a threat to the realm, unpredictable, uncontrollable, and cruel beyond reason. That night, after the chaos had settled and the corpse of the boy king lay cold, Tywin summoned the small council. The door was locked. No one else was allowed in. He spoke plainly. Joffrey was poisoned, yes, but the poison did not kill our future. His madness did. He disgraced our name, made enemies out of allies, and turned the crown into a weapon against the people. Varys blinked. You speak of him as if he's not the victim, my lord. Tywin's voice was colder than winter. He was a liability, and I am done letting children destroy this kingdom. Grand Maester Pycelle shifted nervously. What are you suggesting, Lord Tywin? But Tywin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood and placed a scroll on the table. It was a royal decree signed not by Joffrey, but ready to bear the seal of the hand. A public trial, he said, for all to see. Tyrion will be cleared, and Joffrey will be posthumously condemned. He will be declared unfit to rule, and his actions deemed treasonous to the realm. Littlefinger raised an eyebrow. You want to try a dead king? I want to protect my house, Tywin replied. And if it means rewriting the story of that boy's reign, so be it. Let history remember him as a danger to the realm, not as a martyr. The council fell silent. No one dared oppose him. 2 days later, the bells rang, not for mourning, but for justice. A royal declaration was made. The death of King Joffrey had exposed years of cruelty and misrule. The small council, led by Tywin, declared that the king had violated sacred oaths, dishonored noble houses, and risked war with every decision he made. Witnesses were brought forward, servants who had seen him torture animals for sport, nobles who had begged for mercy after his punishments, even a former Kingsguard who had resigned in protest of Joffrey's actions. The city was shocked. Whispers spread like wildfire. The Lannisters are turning on their own. Cersei nearly went mad. She stormed into the council chamber, her eyes wild, her voice cracked with grief. You are spitting on his grave. He was your blood. Tywin did not flinch. He was a monster, and you made him one. I am cleaning your mess for the last time. And just like that, Joffrey Baratheon, once king of the Seven Kingdoms, was declared a traitor in death. He was not buried with honor in the Great Sept. His body was moved quietly to a smaller tomb. His name was stricken from several records. And Tommen, the quiet younger brother, was crowned king with Tywin's hand firm on his shoulder. But peace did not come easily. The Tyrells were furious at the humiliation. Cersei swore revenge, and far across the narrow sea, whispers of a queen with dragons grew louder. Still, in King's Landing, one thing was clear. Tywin Lannister had sent a message. No one, not even a king, is above the realm. The mood in King's Landing had shifted like a sudden winter storm. The capital was used to fear it had lived under the shadow of Joffrey's cruelty for too long, but now a new kind of fear had taken root. This time, it wasn't fear of a mad king. It was fear of a man who had the spine to execute his own blood, even in death. People whispered in the streets, careful not to speak too loudly. If Tywin Lannister can destroy his own grandson for the good of the realm, what could he do to anyone else? Cersei had locked herself in her chambers, refusing to eat, bathe, or sleep. Her grief had twisted into hatred, a slow-burning fire aimed directly at her father. Every time she looked at Tommen, she didn't see her surviving son. She saw the boy Tywin would now mold into his perfect puppet. She had begged Tommen not to take the crown. "Let them give it to someone else," she had whispered in the dead of night. "Let them choke on it like they let your brother die." But Tommen had no say. The boy was gentle, yes, but more than that, he was afraid of his mother, of the throne, of the lion behind it all. And Tywin? Tywin was already writing laws in Tommen's name before the crown had even touched the boy's golden hair. In the throne room, the Iron Throne seemed taller now, colder somehow. When Tommen sat upon it for the first time, he trembled slightly. His voice cracked when he repeated the oaths. The nobles applauded, but their eyes didn't stay on the boy. They watched Tywin standing behind the throne like the shadow of a true king. But not everyone was clapping. Margaery Tyrells stood among her family, her smile frozen in place. Joffrey's widow now, though they never got to consummate the marriage. The Tyrells had poured gold, grain, and guards into the capital, hoping to tie their fortunes to the Iron Throne. And now their prize had been painted as a mad tyrant, buried quietly like a dog. Lady Olenna Tyrell, sharp as ever, saw the writing on the wall. "He's cut off the mad limb, but don't think he won't slice at the roots next," she told her granddaughter in private. "We gave him roses, and he sent us thorns. Be careful, dear. Be clever." Margaery understood. She would need to work faster now, charm Tommen, win his heart, and keep her family in the game before the old lion swallowed the board whole. Back in the Tower of the Hand, Tywin watched the city from his balcony. The view was beautiful, rooftops glowing orange under the dusk sky, the sea glittering in the distance. He didn't care. He was thinking about the future. He had spared Tyrion for now. The trial had cleared the imp, but not fully. People still whispered, and Tywin still did not forgive. "You think I did this to save you," he had told Tyrion the night after Joffrey's condemnation. "I did it to protect the realm. You were just the more useful Lannister this time." Tyrion had scoffed. "You put your grandson on trial, killed his name. That doesn't make you strong, it makes you desperate." "Perhaps," Tywin had said, "but desperation is how houses survive when fools nearly destroy them." But deep down, something was shifting in Tywin too. A crack not of guilt, but of awareness. For the first time, he realized he was no longer just fighting enemies outside his walls. His biggest war was within his bloodline. His children were tearing each other apart, and he was running out of time to keep them in line. Far across the narrow sea, word of Joffrey's disgrace reached Daenerys Targaryen through ships and spies. She smiled when she heard it. The dragons at her side roared in the wind. "The lion eats its own now," she said. "Good, let them weaken each other. I will bring fire, and I will bring justice." Back in King's Landing, the smell of fear had not faded. The common folk no longer spoke Joffrey's name. The gold cloaks had orders to strike down anyone who sang songs mocking the late king. But the people found other ways to speak. They carved it into wood, whispered it into ale mugs, told stories to their children. The boy king who choked, the mad prince who was punished. And at the center of it all stood Tywin Lannister, calm, calculating, and cold as stone. He had won. He had removed the disease from his house, but the wound still bled. And somewhere beneath the Red Keep, in the blackest cells, someone else was watching. Someone who had been pushed too far. Oberyn Martell. He smiled as he cleaned the edge of his blade, his voice a whisper in the dark. One lion falls, the rest will follow. Tywin Lannister sat in the sunless gloom of his chamber, nursing a goblet of Dornish red, though it tasted more like bitter memories than wine. He had been cleared by the trial, yes, but not in spirit. People still looked at him like poison. He could feel it in their eyes, in the way servants hesitated before bringing him food, in the way nobles smiled too tight, too quick. He wasn't stupid. Tywin's mercy was a weapon, not a gift. His father hadn't saved him. He had used him. Declaring Joffrey mad had diverted all suspicion, and Tyrion had become the scapegoat that was conveniently not guilty. It was neat. Too neat. Tyrion hated neat. He poured himself more wine and stared at the fire. He had tried once to make peace with his father, to earn even a grain of his approval. Now he saw the truth. Tywin would cut his own children down, one by one, if it meant saving the Lannister name. And maybe, just maybe, he'd started with Joffrey to send a message to the rest. Tyrion leaned forward. If he thinks I'll play the grateful son forever, he's more blind than he is cruel. Across the castle, Cersei watched the sun rise with bloodshot eyes. Her fingers trembled as she laced her gown, her movements jerky, unsteady. She hadn't slept in days. Not real sleep. Just flashes Joffrey choking, reaching for her, his face turning purple, the goblet falling. Then Tywin's voice, calm and cruel, saying the words she would never forgive. He was a monster, and you made him one. She wanted to scream. Instead, she dressed, quietly, carefully. Then she went to the great sept of Baelor, where her son lay alone, not honored, not mourned, just hidden. She fell to her knees at his tomb. I will undo this, she whispered, pressing her cheek to the cold marble. I swear it. I will burn everything if I have to. She knew what she had to do. She needed allies, and not the ones Tywin picked, not the smiling Tyrells, not the slithering Varys or smug Littlefinger. She needed someone who hated Tywin as much as she did, someone who had nothing to lose. Her footsteps echoed through the dungeons that night as she descended to the black cells. The air stank of piss and rot, but she didn't flinch. She had been breathing in lies for years. This was no different. The cell she stopped at was dark, but the man inside smiled when he saw her. His teeth were white, sharp like a predator's. Oberyn Martell, she said softly. The Queen Regent herself, Oberyn said, standing. Should I kneel or kiss your hand? I need your blade, not your charm. Oberyn tilted his head. Then say what you came to say. She stepped closer, close enough for him to see the madness blooming in her eyes. Tywin Lannister murdered my son, not with poison, but with politics. He stripped him of his crown, spit on his memory, and made him a villain in front of the whole realm. Oberyn said nothing, but the way his smile grew told her she had his interest. I know you came here to kill a Lannister, she continued, to avenge your sister. Let me help you do it. He raised an eyebrow. You would turn against your father? She didn't hesitate. He's already turned on me. On all of us. Oberyn stepped forward, the candlelight casting shadows over his sharp features. You want blood. I want justice. Perhaps we can both have what we want. They shook hands that night, a viper and a lioness, striking in the dark. Tywin was not unaware. He had eyes in every corner of the Red Keep. He knew Cersei had gone to the dungeons. He knew the look in her eyes had changed. And he knew she would try something stupid. In his study, he wrote letters, quietly, methodically. One to Lord Mace Tyrell, assuring him that Margaery would soon be queen again once Tommen came of age. One to the Eyrie, to test the loyalty of Lysa Arryn. One more to Dawn, but the most important letter never left his desk. It was a will. Not a declaration of death, but of succession. Tywin was preparing for war not just with the realm, but with his own bloodline. He poured himself a goblet of wine and stared at the flames. They danced like the future, beautiful, violent, uncertain. He had executed one monster, but more were rising, and this time they wore lion's skin. The first snow of the season fell softly over King's Landing, a quiet curtain over a city that no longer slept in peace. The streets were restless. The crown felt lighter on Tommen's head, but the realm beneath it was growing heavier by the day. Tywin Lannister stood in the Red Keep's council chamber, gazing out the high windows. The white flakes melted as they hit the stone, like promises broken before they even landed. The boy king had taken the throne, the court was under his control, and the Tyrells were back in line for now. But Tywin knew well enough, peace was just another word for silence before the scream. And something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. That morning, a raven arrived from Sunspear. The letter bore the seal of House Martell and polite words, but the tone was as sharp as any blade. "We grieve with you, Lord Tywin, for the tragic death of King Joffrey. Though we were not invited to mourn him in person, Dawn remembers injustice when it sees it, and Dawn does not forget." Tywin crushed the letter in his fist. Oberyn was no fool. He was testing the waters, baiting the lion. But what Tywin didn't know was that Oberyn had already started planting venom deep within the Red Keep. Oberyn Martell wasn't just waiting. He was hunting. By day, he attended court, smiling beside his paramour Ellaria Sand, whispering sweet nothings into noble ears and charming the small folk with gifts of gold and spices. But by night, he prowled the halls like a shadow. He met with Varys in hidden corners, trading information like blades. He dined with Tyrion, filling his goblet with wine and his head with dangerous ideas. And once, in a candlelit cellar, he met again with Cersei. "You said you'd help me bring him down," she hissed. "And I will," Oberyn answered. "But bringing down a lion takes more than claws. It takes patience, poison, pressure. I don't care how you do it. I want him gone, and I want it to hurt." Oberyn studied her face, pale and hollow. "What will you do when your father is dead?" Her answer was cold. "Finally start ruling." But Oberyn wasn't convinced. Cersei wanted power, yes, but not for the realm, only for herself. Still, he didn't care. Their goals aligned. For now. Meanwhile, Tyrion had begun noticing things. His food tasted slightly different every day. Not poisoned, no, just changed, as if someone was sending him subtle messages. One evening, he found a coin under his pillow, Dornish gold. Another night, a servant accidentally addressed him as "Your Grace." Tyrion didn't believe in accidents. Someone was playing a game. He confronted Varys in the black cells. "I know you know everything," Tyrion said. "So tell me, am I being lured into something? Or out of something?" Varys gave him that unreadable smile. "You are not being lured, my lord. You are being watched. Closely. By many. Why? Because you're still the most dangerous man in the capital." Tyrion frowned. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Varys stepped closer. "You survived, Joffrey. You outwitted your sister. You embarrassed your father by not dying. And now the realm watches you, wondering if the dwarf will rise or be crushed." Tyrion's eyes narrowed. "So, what do I do?" Varys didn't blink. "You decide who you want to be. A son, a threat, or a kingmaker." In the Tower of the Hand, Tywin was beginning to feel the pressure too. His most loyal spies were giving him vague answers. Gold cloaks were no longer as loyal as they once were. Some members of the small council had grown quiet, secretive. Even Pycelle had begun to stammer when questioned. The rot was spreading, and Tywin could smell it. So he called for Bronn. "If anyone breathes treason near my name, I want to know about it," he told the sellsword. "If anyone whispers with Oberyn Martell behind closed doors, I want a blade at their throat." Bronn grinned. "That'll cost you extra." Tywin didn't blink. "You'll be paid. Just remember, if I fall, you fall with me." But something had already begun. Oberyn had taken the first step. One evening, a raven flew from the Red Keep. Its wings beat hard against the wind, carrying a message written in Oberyn's own hand, sealed with Lannister wax he had stolen from the archives. The letter was addressed to Daenerys Targaryen. In it, he told her everything. About the fall of Joffrey, about the cracks in House Lannister, about the boy king on the throne and the lion who held the strings, and about how Westeros was ready to burn. "The lion rots from the inside," he wrote. "All it needs is fire to finish the job." As the raven disappeared into the night, Oberyn Martell leaned back in his chamber and whispered to Ellaria. "It begins." The raven reached Meereen under the blood-red light of a rising sun. It flew over slums, over pyramids, and landed where dragons roamed in chains and a queen waited on the edge of war. Daenerys Targaryen read Oberyn Martell's letter once, then twice. Her hand trembled not with fear, but with opportunity. The lion rots from the inside. All it needs is fire to finish the job. She folded the parchment slowly, her violet eyes glowing in the dim light of her chamber. Joffrey was dead. Tywin had turned on his own blood. Cersei was cracking. The Lannisters, those golden beasts who had butchered her family, were finally bleeding. Sir Barristan Selmy stood nearby, watching her. "You can't trust a Dornishman's word blindly. Your Grace. Oberyn is cunning, poisonous." Daenerys rose from her seat. "Yes, and so am I." She walked to the balcony where Drogon stirred in the distance, his wings stretching wide in the morning wind. "He sees Westeros breaking, and he wants me to finish what he can't." "Are you going to?" Selmy asked, cautious. Daenerys didn't answer. Not yet. But her thoughts were racing. If the Lannisters were fighting amongst themselves, now was the time to strike. But not with dragons, not yet. No, this war would begin with whispers, gold, and fear. "Send a message back," she said. "Tell Oberyn the fire is listening." Back in King's Landing, the city was coiled like a spring, tension in every corner. Tywin had begun tightening his grip on the court, issuing new taxes, expanding the gold cloaks, and arranging a marriage between Tommen and Margaery to be completed before the boy could grow soft. But every move brought resistance, quiet, subtle, dangerous. The small council grew colder. Even Kevan Lannister, Tywin's own brother, started questioning his choices. "You disgrace our family's blood by putting Joffrey on trial," Kevan had said behind closed doors. "Now the Tyrells mistrust us, the Martells move in shadows, and our daughter is unraveling." Tywin's voice was pure steel. "I did what I had to do. Even if it turns your own children against you?" "They were never mine to begin with," Tywin replied. "They were flaws I tolerated for the sake of the name. No more." Kevan stared at him in silence, then left without another word. Even loyalty had limits. Meanwhile, Cersei had begun gathering her own little court. Not nobles, not lords, but enemies of her father. Bitter knights, exiled lords, men who had once served Robert but now wanted chaos. And she had found something Tywin had missed. A boy. Dark hair, pale eyes. Bastard of Robert Baratheon. Gendry. Hidden in Flea Bottom all this time, and now in her hands. She stood over him in a chamber beneath the Red Keep. "You don't know what you are," she whispered. But you could be a king. Gendry looked up, terrified. I'm no one. Cersei's smile was slow and cruel. No, you're everyone's problem now. She didn't need him to sit on the throne. She needed him to scare the realm. A legitimate male Baratheon, with the blood of kings, the perfect symbol to rally the enemies of House Lannister. She would use him to fracture what her father thought he had mended. And if he died along the way, so be it. In another wing of the castle, Tyrion sat across from Oberyn Martell over a quiet supper, the air thick with tension. You sent a letter, Tyrion said. Oberyn raised an eyebrow. Many, actually. I'm quite a fan of ink and secrets. Tyrion leaned closer. You sent one to Daenerys Targaryen. I know it. Oberyn sipped his wine, unbothered. And if I did? You just invited dragons to the board, Oberyn. Do you know what you've done? Oberyn's smile was sharp. I've invited balance. Tyrion looked away, heart pounding. His father was right about one thing. Everything was unraveling. But Tywin had made one critical mistake. He had taught his enemies to think like him. Now they were playing his game. And they were playing to win. In the dead of night, as snow continued to fall over King's Landing, Tywin awoke to the sound of steel clashing far below. Not a battle, a duel. He rushed to the balcony, pulling aside the curtains. In the courtyard, two men circled each other under torchlight, one in red, one in black. It was Jaime and Loras Tyrell. Steel rang against steel, sparks flew. Neither held back. Guards watched, but didn't interfere. This was personal. Tywin's heart sank. His family was at war not just with the world, but with itself. And somewhere below, deep in the dungeons, a secret was about to slip through iron bars. Gendry was gone, vanished. Only a smear of blood on the straw left behind. The lion was roaring, but no one was listening anymore. The morning after Gendry's disappearance, the Red Keep stirred with unease. Tywin Lannister paced his chambers like a wolf trapped in a cage. Not because he cared about the bastard boy, but because someone had moved him under his very nose. And Tywin never lost control. Reports flooded in. The cell was unguarded. The guards on duty gone. One turned up in a brothel with his throat slit. The other hadn't turned up at all. The blood trail stopped near the stables. Horses were missing. Tywin clenched his jaw. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. He summoned his spies. I want him found. I want the heads of the traitors who took him. Anyone who helped them will burn. But no heads arrived, no trails, no whispers. Because Cersei had covered her tracks too well. In the lowest crypts of the city, far beneath the noses of Tywin's eyes, Cersei stood before Gendry once more. This time, he wasn't in chains. He wore fine clothes, his hair trimmed, and his hands were clean for the first time in years. He looked almost royal. You'll stay hidden? For now, she told him. But soon your name will fly on banners. You'll be the rightful king. The people will cheer for you. Gendry shook his head. I'm not a king. You don't have to be, Cersei said with a smile. You just have to be useful. Behind her, Qyburn emerged from the shadows. His eyes glowed with quiet obsession. The people love a poor boy with royal blood, especially when he's wronged. We'll let them believe he's their last hope. Cersei turned to Gendry. And then, when my father's kingdom crumbles, I'll be the one holding the crown. Meanwhile, Tyrion walked the gardens alone, the sun warm for once, though it did nothing to ease his mind. He had pieced it all together. Cersei's secret meetings, Gendry's vanishing, the shift in power behind closed doors. He knew where this was heading. The throne was no longer safe, not from Daenerys, not from Stannis, and certainly not from within the Lannister family itself. Everyone was planning their own victory, but all Tyrion could see was a bloody end. And so, for the first time in his life, he wrote a letter not as a Lannister, but as a desperate man. It was addressed to Daenerys Targaryen. You do not know me, but I know you. I know your pain. I know your hunger for justice. But know this, if you come to Westeros now, you will not find a realm to conquer. You will find ashes and ghosts. But if you wait, you may find something far more powerful than an army. You may find an ally. He sent it with a seal he hadn't used in years, the hand of a lion, broken and burning. That same evening, Oberyn Martell stood atop the Red Keep's highest tower. The wind roared past him, pulling at his cloak like a lover's grip. He watched the city so full of fire, and yet so blind. Ilaria stepped beside him. You've stirred the nest, love. Are you ready for the sting? Oberyn grinned. It's already begun. Indeed, it had. In the streets, gold cloaks whispered about disloyalty. In taverns, drunkards spoke of the bastard king. In the brothels, coin flowed freely. Someone was buying loyalty, and it wasn't Tywin. Oberyn had never wanted a throne, but he had always wanted vengeance, and now vengeance had a face. Tywin Lannister, stripped of his armor, surrounded by enemies, and drowning in his own legacy. All it would take now was a spark. That spark came the next day. A riot broke out near the Sept of Baelor. It started with bread. A baker, accused of overcharging, a hungry mother with a dying child. Words turned to fists, fists turned to blood. By nightfall, 6 gold cloaks were dead. A dozen small folk trampled, and painted across the Sept's doors in thick black tar were 3 words: the bastard king. Tywin slammed his fist against the council table. This ends now. But no one answered him. Mace Tyrell was silent. Kevan avoided his eyes. Varys said nothing, only stared at the sigil drawn on the parchment before him. Only Littlefinger dared speak. Your enemies are no longer across the sea, Lord Tywin. They're at your table, and they wear lion's skin. That night, Tywin sat alone in his chamber, staring at the fire. He thought of Joanna, of Jaime, of Cersei, of Tyrion. He had tried to shape them into legacy, but they had become his punishment. And far across the sea, a dragon's wings unfurled. Daenerys read Tyrion's letter and smiled. "Tell the fleet to prepare," she said softly. "The game is no longer theirs alone." The bells rang at dawn, not for a funeral, not for a coronation, but for something far worse. A summons. Every major lord, council member, and sworn sword within the Red Keep was ordered to the throne room at once. Tywin Lannister stood at the foot of the Iron Throne, his jaw set, his red cloak draped perfectly over his shoulders. Soldiers lined the hall, archers in the rafters. The message was clear. This would not be a council meeting. This would be a reckoning. As the hall filled, tension thickened like fog. Cersei entered stone-faced, her eyes locked on her father with pure hatred. Jaime followed, tense, ready for violence. Margaery and Olenna Tyrell stood together, whispering fearfully. Oberyn Martell strolled in with a casual smile, as if attending a festival instead of a potential massacre. And last came Tyrion, calm but observant, noting every detail. He knew this was the moment everything would shatter. When silence finally settled, Tywin spoke. "Someone has taken a royal bastard from my custody. Someone has spread treason in the streets. Someone has dared challenge House Lannister." His eyes scanned the room, cold, controlled. "And today, that traitor will face justice." A low murmur ran through the hall. Tyrion stiffened. Cersei smirked. Oberyn's fingers tapped his spear. The Tyrells exchanged glances. Then the doors slammed shut. Dozens of gold cloaks poured in, closing every exit. Tywin lifted a scroll. A confession was found near the abandoned cell, signed, "The Bastard King," a challenge to the true ruler, a threat to the realm. He held up the parchment, but Tyrion's sharp eyes caught it immediately. The seal was wrong. That wasn't Tywin's scroll. That wasn't Tywin's wax. That wasn't Tywin's handwriting. Someone had planted it. Someone wanted Tywin to believe it. Someone wanted a war to begin today. Before anyone could speak, Oberyn took a step forward. "Such a bold liar," he said softly, smiling. "But you always had a talent for writing your own truths, Lord Tywin." Tywin turned, anger slipping through his composure. "You dare question me, Martell?" Oberyn shrugged. "I question everything, especially lions with stolen claws." Gold cloaks tensed. Spears lowered. Jaime's hand drifted toward his sword. Cersei smiled wider. The trap was closing. Suddenly, a shout echoed through the hall. "Let him through!" A group of ragged men burst in, dragging someone between them. Tywin's eyes widened. Tyrion froze. Cersei's breath caught in her throat. It was Gendry. The boy was bruised, bleeding, terrified but alive. "Found him fleeing toward the river," a guard yelled. "He says he was taken from the dungeons by Lannister men." Every face turned toward Cersei. Her smile vanished. Tywin's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "Cersei, what have you done?" Before she could answer, Gendry cried out, pointing. "She told me I was a king. She wanted me to rise against you." Chaos exploded. Marjorie gasped. Olenna cursed. Jaime stepped between his sister and the guards, and Oberyn laughed. A cold, cruel, victorious laugh. Cersei screamed, lunging at Gendry, but Jaime pulled her back. She fought like a wild animal, eyes full of madness. "He was my son," she shouted at Tywin, "and you killed him. You took his crown, his name, his honor. You murdered him." Tywin didn't flinch, but something inside him cracked. "You are unfit to lead," he said, "unstable, reckless. And now you commit treason using a bastard to challenge the throne?" Cersei spat at his feet. "You ruined our family long before I did." "Guards," Tywin commanded, voice like ice, "take her." Jaime stepped between them, sword drawn. "Try it," he warned. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." Gasps erupted. A Kingsguard threatening the hand. Tywin's face drained of color. For the first time, the lion looked afraid. "You would betray your father?" he whispered. Jaime's voice shook. "I swore to protect her. I won't let you destroy her too." Oberyn leaned casually on his spear. Well, the lions finally tear each other apart." Tyrion stepped forward, trying to stop it. "Father, this is madness. Listen." "Enough." Tywin's roar silenced the hall. He pointed at Cersei and Jaime. "You two are hereby stripped of authority, removed from court, and will be taken to Casterly Rock by force if needed." The hall erupted with shouts. Swords were drawn. Tyrells retreated. Gold cloaks surged forward. And then a deep, thunderous sound shook the Red Keep. A sound no one had heard in over 100 years. A roar. Not of lions, of dragons. Somewhere far above, the sky turned black. The windows rattled. The floor trembled. The crowd froze. Oberyn smiled slowly. "Ah, the fire arrives," Tyrion whispered, horrified and amazed. "She's here." Tywin's face went pale. For the first time in his life, the lion knew fear. The sky over King's Landing burned gold and red. At first, people thought it was another wildfire accident, a candle knocked over, a careless spark. But when the first dragon's shriek echoed across the sky, when shadows larger than ships passed over the spires of the Red Keep, the city knew. Daenerys Targaryen had arrived. From the towers of the Sept to the slums of Flea Bottom, thousands looked up and saw Drogon cut through the sky like death itself. His wings blotted out the sun. Behind him flew Rhaegal and Viserion, smaller but just as terrifying. Soldiers dropped spears, nobles fainted, mothers clutched their children and prayed to gods who would no longer answer. In the throne room, silence turned into chaos. Gold cloaks ran for the exits. Lannister bannermen tried to flee. The Tyrells were already gone. Olenna had smelled fire coming long before the rest. But at the heart of the storm, Tywin Lannister stood still. "Hold the gates," he commanded. "Raise the scorpions, send word to the harbour, ready the fleet." A gust of hot wind shattered the stained glass windows. Shards flew inward like knives. Tywin raised his arms to shield himself as the dragon's roar thundered across the hall. "She didn't wait," Tyrion muttered, eyes wide. "She's not playing games." Oberyn was smiling again, that calm, mocking smile. "I warned you," he said, stepping toward Tywin. "The lion rots from the inside. The fire just helps the world smell it." "You did this," Tywin growled. "No," Oberyn said, unsheathing his blade. "You did this. Years ago. In Elia's blood. In your arrogance. This is just the consequence." Then, outside, the first scream rang out. Drogon struck first, his fire pouring down on the outer walls like boiling oil. The battlements crumbled. The city's defences, so strong on paper, folded like parchment in wind. Viserion ripped through a tower of bells. Rhaegal swooped low over the city, igniting wagons, tents, and guard posts. The gold cloaks fought back briefly. Crossbows and scorpions launched toward the sky, but they were too slow, too small, too late. Within minutes, the outer gates collapsed, and through the smoke came unsullied, moving like ghosts. Behind them, a wave of freedmen, sellswords, and Dothraki, a storm of fire and steel. But the people didn't flee Daenerys. They ran toward her, toward hope, toward the breaker of chains. Inside the Red Keep, Tywin realized his walls were closing faster than even he had planned for. He turned to his guards. "Find the boy. Find Tommen. Get him out of the city." But Tommen was already gone. Sir Meryn Trant, sent to secure the boy king, returned alone, his white cloak soaked in blood. "They took him," he said, panicked. "A girl with silver hair. And a dwarf. They took him." Tywin's world tilted. Tyrion? But Tyrion was already gone too. Earlier that night, before the dragons came, Tyrion had moved quickly. He knew Daenerys would strike. He had begged her to wait, but fire did not wait. He had gone to Tommen himself, dragging the boy out of his chamber, wrapped in a cloak, away from the gold cloaks, away from his family. And outside the gates, waiting on a pale horse, Daenerys had greeted them. Tyrion handed the boy over without a word. "You'll protect him?" he asked. "I will raise him," Daenerys said. "In truth, in peace, in fire." Behind her, Drogon roared. And the skies opened. In the throne room, Tywin sat in silence. The others had fled. Jaime had disappeared with Cersei, trying to smuggle her out through the tunnels below the keep. Oberyn had vanished into the smoke, hunting Lannister men like a viper in a garden. Tywin sat alone. The Iron Throne stood before him. For decades, he had moved kings like pawns. He had ruled through whispers and war. He had built a dynasty from the ashes of rebellion. And now, he would die alone. Not in battle, not with honor, but in silence. The doors burst open. Daenerys walked through the smoke, her silver hair glowing in the firelight. Behind her, Tyrion followed, blood on his hands. Tywin looked at them calmly. No fear left, only pride, twisted, cracked, and hollow. "So," he said, "the usurper returns." Daenerys did not speak. Tyrion stepped forward. "She's not the usurper, father. You were. You usurped justice, mercy, truth." Tywin narrowed his eyes. "And what will you do, boy? Execute me? That won't fix you." Tyrion's voice dropped. "It won't fix anything." He turned away, but Daenerys stepped forward. Dracarys. The flame swallowed the lion whole, and the war was over. King's Landing burned for 3 days. When the smoke cleared, a new banner flew from the towers, a silver dragon on a field of red. Daenerys ruled now, with Tyrion as her hand, and Tommen Baratheon raised in truth. Away from thrones and lies grew in the shadow of dragons, not lions. House Lannister was finished, and the realm was finally free.